Okay, everybody, welcome to 9.3 Pre-Algebra Math, Part 1. And today we have a 34-point skill sheet for classwork, and we have 12 points here for note-taking guide. You can get it, the email, and the Pythagorean Theorem. So, no one understands Pythagorean Theorem. For students out there, this might be your introduction to the Pythagorean Theorem. Okay, today's bell work. Multiple choice here. Number 1, which expression is not equivalent to that? And then number 2, write the fraction in simplest form. Teacher is giving your students about 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back for solutions. Square root of 48, we factored out. 16, our largest perfect square is 16 times radical 3, and that's what it becomes here, 4 times the radical 3. So this would not be equal to that. This is similar to that. This is that. And then that is, the order here would not be the same. It's not the same order, even though that's close. And then write the fraction in the simplest form. We just break this down into prime factors here, and then we cancel where we can. And we end up with 7 over 2n squared for number. Okay, into our lesson today. You've used square roots. You'll use Pythagorean theorem to solve problems. So we have this situation here. We have a triangle here. In case you don't know yet, this is a leg, this is a leg. This is a right triangle. This is a 90-degree angle here. And then this would be what's called a hypotenuse, which is the longest side of a triangle. And then this is a little factoid here, is a cable-stayed bridge that spans Ohio River, blah, blah, blah. How long is the cable? We want to find out how long this cable is here. How do we do that? There is a way of finding that out. In a right triangle, the hypotenuse is the side opposite the right angle. The legs are the sides that form the right angle. So here's our hypotenuse. Here's our right angle here. So this side is called opposite of this angle here. It's opposite here. A and B are called the legs of the triangle. The lengths of the legs and the length of the hypotenuse of a right triangle are related by what's called the Pythagorean theorem. Students, this is classwork page 2 on your sheet. For any right triangle, the sum of the squares of the lengths of the leg equals the square of the length of the hypotenuse. So in this case here, here's our right triangle again. Here's our right angle here. And then this is the hypotenuse. This is a symbol here for a 90-degree angle. And then these are the legs. So to find the length to the nearest foot of the cable shown above, use the right triangle formed by a tower, the bridge surface, and the cable. So here's our Pythagorean theorem right here. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. And so we just plug in our values from the above information. The c squared is our hypotenuse here. These are the legs here. Then when we square these, we get these numbers here. So when these are added together, they are what equals the hypotenuse, the square of that. So 273, 428 equals c squared. How do we solve that? Well, we take the positive square root of each side, and we get 523 foot equals c. That equals the hypotenuse of that triangle. The length of the cable was that amount there. So our first guided practice is to determine whether the corner of shelf is actually a right angle. We have a right angle here, I suppose. A carpenter uses a ruler and a pencil to make a mark at 3 inches along the shelf, at 4 inches of the other. The carpenter takes a measurement and is satisfied that the corner is a right angle. What distance did the carpenter measure? So this is a kind of a long response issue here. What distance did the carpenter measure? Why does the carpenter's method work? So we're going to find out here what method the carpenter is using here. So students, pay attention to the guided practice so you can do your independent practice. So here's the situation again. To determine that 5 inches sample answer, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we have 3 squared plus 4 squared equals C squared. So we would have like a hypotenuse here. This would be a right angle here. So we're trying to figure the distance between here and here. And to figure that, we figured out that it's 5 inches here. This is a 3, 4, 5 triangle, right triangle here. So that would be the way that you'd figure it. So by using these calculations here, you're finding the distance between here and here by forming a right triangle here. What distance did a carpenter measure? Why does the carpenter's method work? I'm going to help you out on that. He used the Pythagorean theorem here. And what distance did the carpenter measure? He measured the hypotenuse here. This is the hypotenuse here. And this has got to be a right angle for that to work. Okay, so students, in your own words, define hypotenuse and define legs. Okay, example 2, find the length of a leg. Find the unknown length A in the simplest form. So we have a hypotenuse 12, and then we have a leg here of 10. What is the measurement of this A here? So we set up our Pythagorean theorem here, and we plug in the values that we have. We have the hypotenuse, and we have the length of one leg here, B. So we're trying to find A. So we have this situation here now from squaring these numbers up here. We move over our 100. This becomes 44 over here. We subtract 100 from both sides. What's the square root of 44? Well, I don't know. It's around 6 point something. So that would be the way that you would solve for A here. It's 2 times the square root of 11 is another way of putting it. So on the length here, A would be 2 times square root of 7. This is page 8 on your class sheet, students. Okay, into our next guided practice, find the unknown length. Students here, this is yours, find the unknown length. So how are we going to do this? Well, let's use the Pythagorean theorem. So we have 2 values here. We have C squared, which is 25, and we have A squared. We need to solve for B squared. So we move this over here by subtracting 400 from both sides. So B equals the square root of 225. B equals 15 for number 3. Students, this is all you down here. Find your hypotenuse. Okay, so that is 9.3 part 1. Part 2, part 3 is available here as well as everything else. Thank you.